Welcome to Carlton's Math Corner. Today we are going to continue our study on point-slope form. At this time, please make sure that you have your math journal, vocab packet, as well as something to write with. Our target today is I can convert standard form to slope-intercept form. Okay, so looking at our first problem, this is in standard form. What steps are going on in order for us to get to slope-intercept form? Well, I noticed that step number one, the x term is being moved from the left side to the right side. And remember, in order to move a term from one side to the other, we always do the opposite. So we do the inverse. So if this is positive, we do negative, or we do subtraction. And so 4x minus 4x is 0. So it's no longer on the left side. And now on the right side, I put minus 4x. There are no other like terms to subtract it from, so it's just placed next to that negative 16. So we have negative 8y that's still there equals negative 16 minus 4x. What's step number two? Yes, step number two, we're trying to get that y all by itself. We don't want a coefficient in front of it other than 1. There is a 1 here. You can't really see it, but 1 is the only thing that doesn't change that y. We can't have a negative 8, so in order to get rid of that, we need to divide by negative 8, because negative 8 divided by negative 8 is 1. But notice that is on the left side. Whatever we do on the left side, we have to do on the right side. So I notice that each term is being divided by negative 8. And what happens is, when we do that, we get y equals, and negative 16 divided by negative 8 is 2, plus, because a negative divided by a negative is positive, 4 divided by 8, or 4/8, is simplified down to 1/2. So 1/2 x. How about step number 3? What do you notice? Yeah, step number 3 is just kind of rearranging these terms because they are on the right side, so that's good, but now they just need to be in the correct order. The x needs to come first because that number in front is called our slope, and the lonely term, the one that doesn't have an x next to it, is called our y-intercept, so that has to be at the end. So our answer is y equals 1/2 x plus 2. So the steps that we did, well, we moved the x term to the right side. And remember, we're doing the inverse operation. Then we divided all the terms by the coefficient. This is a coefficient. Any number next to a variable is a coefficient. We divide it by that number that's next to the y. And remember, okay, let's look at the next problem. What is different about this one? Well, I noticed that this one has not just a fraction next to the x, which remember the coefficient next to the x is slope, so that's okay. Slope can be rise over run, so it can be a fraction. But this one has a fraction next to y. And so I don't really want that there. So when I have a fraction there as well as a fraction in front of the x, I'm going to try to get rid of those fractions. So why am I multiplying everything by 6? Like, where does a 6 come from? Because I don't see any 6 in this equation. Exactly. If you look at the denominators of the fraction, remember denominators are down in the basement. So if you look at the numbers underneath on the bottom of the fraction, the 2 and the 3, a least common multiple that they share is 6. Now, least common multiples, remember, are you count by 2s, you count by 3s. The smallest number they share, that is their common multiple, so their least common multiple. And so when I multiply everything by 6, what happens is now I don't have any fractions. And so if I take a half of 6, or if I take 2 or 6 divided by 2 and then times 1, I get 3. Or 6 divided by 3 times 1, I get 2. So notice when I take a half, I get a 3, a third, I get 2. The minus stays the same. And then 6 times 3 is 18. So that changes to 18. So that step number 1, has been added. So it's no longer 3 steps. Now we got 4 steps. The rest of the steps, though, look like they're the same. I'm still moving the x term to the right side. And then I'm still dividing by the coefficient that's in front of the y. And I'm dividing every term by that. And then I am making sure that it's written in slope-intercept form. So the other steps remain the same. It's just I had to get rid of the fractions. And so if you look at our steps, now the only thing we added was step number 1. We got rid of all the fractions by fraction busting them. We found a least common multiple and multiplied every term by that. Then the rest of the steps remain the same. So we move the x term to the right side. We divided all the terms by the coefficient that's in front of the y. And then we switch the order to fit y equals mx plus b, the slope-intercept form. Okay, so added another step, but once we did that one extra step, then everything else remained the same. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to try these 3 problems. Some of them have a fraction in them and some do not. I would highly recommend that if they have, more than just a fraction in front of the x, I would like number 3. This one has a fraction here as well as here. I would highly recommend, get rid of those fractions first. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me at Carlton's Math Corner, and I look forward to meeting with you again.